The crystal people of planet Solera were shaking with fear as their world fell apart around them. Their beautiful home was under attack, and nothing they did could stop it. Ambassador Veltari stood in the command center, watching through the windows as another one of their protective shields exploded in a shower of bright lights. The explosion lit up the sky like deadly fireworks. But there was nothing beautiful about what was happening above their planet. Huge dark ships floated like giant metal monsters. These ships belonged to the Korthok Empire, and they were not here to make friends. The Korthok were a cruel race of aliens who saw the crystal people as nothing more than valuable rocks to be mined and sold. Their ships were covered in weapons, all pointed down at the helpless planet below. Veltari's body was made of living crystal that sparkled in the light. But now, those crystals were dim with worry. His people were peaceful. They had never hurt anyone. They spent their days creating beautiful music and art, not learning how to fight wars. But the Korthok did not care about beauty or peace. They only cared about profit. "We need to send out a call for help," Veltari said to his assistants. When he spoke, his voice made soft musical sounds like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Send our distress signal to every corner of the galaxy. Someone out there must be willing to help us." The crystal people had been calling for help for days, but no one answered. The big Galactic Council, which was supposed to protect peaceful worlds, had already decided that Solera was too dangerous to save. They said it was too close to something they called Deathworlds, and they would not risk their ships or soldiers. Just when all hope seemed lost, something impossible happened. A response came from a place no one expected. The signal came from a small planet called Sol 3, which was far away in a quiet part of the galaxy. But this planet had a terrible reputation. In all the galactic databases, Sol 3 was marked with red warning signs. It was classified as one of the most dangerous death worlds known to exist. On the big viewing screen in the command center, a face appeared. It was the face of a human named Captain Jake Morrison. His skin looked weathered and tough, like someone who had seen many battles. His eyes were blue like a clear sky, and they looked very serious and determined. Behind him, other humans moved around what looked like the bridge of a spaceship. "This is the Earthship Defiance," the human said in a calm, steady voice. "We got your message, people of Zalara. Do not worry. Help is coming to you right now." Veltari stared at the screen, in confusion. These humans looked so strange and weak. Their skin was soft and pink, with no natural armor or protection. They had no claws, no fangs, no thick shells like proper warriors should have. They looked like they would break if you touched them too hard. How could creatures this fragile survive on a death world? And how could they possibly help fight the mighty Korthok Empire? But there was something in Captain Morrison's voice that made Veltari feel a tiny spark of hope. The human spoke like he was absolutely certain he could win, even though his people looked so weak and small. Suddenly, another voice cut through the communication channel. This voice was deep and harsh, like rocks grinding together. It belonged to General Vask, the leader of the Korthok attack force. "Listen here, you pathetic mammals," General Vask snarled. "I have looked up your species in our files. You are listed as primitive death world creatures. You have no real weapons, no proper armor, nothing that could threaten the mighty Korthok Empire. Leave this place now, or we will destroy your little ships, along with these worthless crystal beings." Captain Morrison listened to these threats, without showing any fear. Instead, something that looked like a smile appeared on his face. But it was not a happy smile. It was cold and dangerous, like the smile of a predator who had just spotted easy prey. "General Vask," Morrison said, his voice still calm and steady, "I think you are about to learn something very important. You are about to discover what makes a death world truly dangerous." 3 small ships suddenly appeared out of nowhere in the darkness of space around planet Solera. They had traveled faster than light to get there, but now they looked tiny and helpless next to the massive Korthok war fleet. The human ships were called the Defiance, the Retribution, and the Last Stand. Each ship was much smaller than even the smallest Korthok vessel, but they moved through space in a way that seemed almost alive, like hunting animals stalking their prey. The human ships had clearly seen many battles before. Their metal hulls were covered in scars and dents from old fights, but they had been repaired and kept in perfect working condition. These were not shiny new ships built for show. These were weapons that had been tested in real combat many times and had always come home. On the bridge of the Defiance, Lieutenant Commander Amy Rodriguez sat at her weapons station, studying the enemy ships on her computer screens. She counted each Korthok vessel carefully, checking their size and firepower. Her face was calm and professional as she did the math that would decide if they lived or died. "Captain Morrison," she said without looking up from her screens, "I count 67 enemy ships out there. Based on their size and weapons, they have about 15 times more firepower than we do." Any normal military commander would have ordered an immediate retreat after hearing numbers like that. Fighting against odds of 15 to 1 was considered suicide by every tactical manual ever written. But Captain Morrison just nodded like this was exactly what he had expected to hear. "Those sound like acceptable odds to me," Morrison said in the same calm voice. He might use to order coffee. The crystal people watching from their planet could not believe what they were hearing. Did these humans not understand basic math? How could 3 small ships fight 67 large ones and have any chance of winning? Some of the Zelani began to wonder if humans were perhaps not as intelligent as they had hoped. Morrison turned to another member of his crew, a woman named Lisa Park, who was in charge of communications. "Lisa, I want you to open up a channel so I can talk to all the Korthok ships at once." Lisa's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "Communication channel is open and ready, Captain." Morrison stood up from his captain's chair and spoke in a voice that carried clearly across the vast emptiness of space to reach every enemy ship in the fleet. "Attention all Korthok vessels," he said, and his voice was as cold and sharp as a blade made of ice. "I am going to give you one chance, and only one chance, to leave this place peacefully. Turn your ships around and get out of Zelani's space, right now. If you do that, we will let you keep your ships and your lives." The response came immediately from General Vask, the Korthok commander. His laughter was loud and harsh, like the sound of breaking glass. The laugh went on for several seconds before he could speak. "You stupid little mammals," General Vask said, his voice full of contempt. "Look at yourselves. You have thin skin that tears easily. Your bones are weak and brittle. You have no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons at all. How did pathetic creatures like you ever manage to survive on a death world? We Korthok are different. We are born to be warriors. We are bred for conquest and violence. Fighting and killing is in our blood." Morrison looked over at Rodriguez, who was already working at her weapons console, preparing to fire. She was entering targeting information for each enemy ship, calculating the best way to attack them. Her movements were quick and precise, like someone who had done this many times before. "General Vask," Morrison said, his voice still perfectly calm, "you are about to learn something very important today. You are about to discover the difference between being born to fight and being forced to survive." Then Morrison turned to speak to the crystal people on the planet below. "Solera Command, I strongly recommend that your people move to the deepest shelters you have. Things are about to get very interesting up here." The first wave of human weapons streaked across the darkness of space toward the Korthok fleet. These were not random shots fired in anger. Each torpedo was guided by human minds that had learned perfect accuracy from generations of ancestors, who had to hunt dangerous animals across impossible distances just to survive. Every shot was aimed with the deadly precision that came from a species that had to be perfect hunters or die hungry. The space around planet Zalara turned into complete madness as the battle began. The human ships started moving in ways that seemed impossible to everyone watching. They twisted and spun through space like dancers, making sharp turns and sudden stops that should have been deadly to anyone inside. But the humans kept fighting, as if nothing unusual was happening. What the Korthok enemies did not know was something very important about human bodies. On Earth, humans had learned to live with forces that would kill most other aliens in the galaxy. When a human ship made a sharp turn at high speed, the people inside felt crushing pressure that would turn other species into liquid. But humans had grown up with this kind of pressure their whole lives. Their bodies were built to handle it. The Korthok watched in shock as the tiny human ships danced around their massive vessels, like flies around elephants. Every time the Korthok tried to aim their big weapons at the human ships would suddenly change direction in ways that the Korthok computers could not predict. This was not how space battles were supposed to work according to everything they had learned about warfare. While the ships fought in space, something even more incredible was happening inside one of the Korthok cruisers. A team of human soldiers had managed to break into the enemy ship, and they were fighting their way through the corridors inside. Marine Sergeant Tom Walker was leading his squad of soldiers through the alien ship. The air inside the Korthok vessel was filled with gases that would kill most species within minutes. The atmosphere was a deadly mixture of chemicals that the Korthok breathed naturally. But it was pure poison to almost every other form of life in the galaxy. But the humans just put on simple breathing masks and kept moving forward. These masks were not fancy or complicated. They were just basic filters that cleaned the air enough for humans to breathe. What amazed the Korthok was that humans had evolved on a world where the air itself was often dangerous. Earth's atmosphere had trained human lungs to process all kinds of harmful gases that other species could never handle. Enemy soldiers on the left side called out Corporal Diana Hayes, one of the human soldiers in the squad. Her voice was calm and steady, even though she was fighting in conditions that should have been terrifying. The artificial gravity inside the alien ship kept changing, making it feel like the floor was moving under their feet. Sometimes they felt heavy as rocks, sometimes light as feathers. But Diana just adjusted her stance and kept fighting. She raised her weapon and fired 3 shots at a Korthok warrior who was charging toward them. The Korthok soldier was wearing thick natural armor that could stop most weapons used by galactic species. This armor was like a shell made of the hardest materials in the universe. But Diana's bullets went right through it, like it was made of paper. The reason was simple but terrible. Human weapons were not designed to fight other galactic species. They were designed to hunt and kill the dangerous animals and monsters that lived on Earth. Every day on the human homeworld, people had to deal with creatures and materials that were tougher than anything most aliens had ever seen. So human weapons were built to punch through absolutely anything. The Korthok boarding parties had expected this fight to be easy. They thought humans were soft and weak creatures who would fall apart as soon as real violence started. Instead, they found themselves fighting beings who seemed completely unbothered by things that should have killed them instantly. The temperature inside the damaged ship was hot enough to boil water. Deadly radiation was leaking from broken systems. The air was full of toxic chemicals. The gravity kept changing in ways that would make most creatures sick and helpless. But the humans just kept fighting like none of this mattered at all. How are they still alive? One wounded Korthok soldier gasped into his communication device, speaking to his commander. The heat alone should have cooked them by now. The radiation should have made them too sick to move. How are they still fighting us? Tom Walker heard this question through his universal translator device and could not help but smile. "Listen, buddy," he said to the confused alien. "This stuff you think is so dangerous. This is barely as bad as a regular Tuesday back home on Earth." All across the battlefield, the same pattern kept repeating. Every time the Korthok thought they had found a way to stop the humans, the humans would instantly change their tactics and find a new way to fight. This was the most deadly thing about humans. They never gave up, and they never stopped learning. Their species had survived ice ages that froze entire continents, volcanic explosions that blocked out the sun, and disasters that wiped out most other life on their planet. Nothing the Korthok could do was worse than what Earth had already thrown at humanity for millions of years. As the battle continued to rage around planet Solara, something amazing started to happen. Aliens from across the galaxy who were watching this fight began to understand something they had never realized before. The things that made humans look weak and fragile were actually the exact things that made them the most dangerous fighters in the universe. Human bones were much lighter than the thick, heavy bones of most alien species. Other aliens had always thought this made humans breakable and delicate, but now they saw the truth. Those lightweight bones allowed humans to move with incredible speed. While heavy aliens struggled to change direction quickly, humans could twist and dodge like lightning bolts. Their bodies were built for speed and agility, not for standing still and taking punishment. Even more impressive was how fast humans could heal from wounds. When other species got injured in battle, they usually had to stop fighting and get medical help. But humans just kept going even when they were hurt. Their bodies had learned to fix damage quickly and efficiently. Because on Earth, an injured animal that could not keep moving would become food for predators. So humans had evolved to heal fast or die. But the most deadly thing about humans was how quickly they could change their fighting methods. In the middle of battle, when their first plan did not work, they would instantly come up with a completely new way to fight. Other species needed time to think and plan and discuss new tactics. Humans just adapted on the spot, like water flowing around a rock. Commander Mike Stevens was flying his small fighter ship through a field of broken metal and debris that had once been Korthok vessels. For any other pilot in the galaxy, trying to fly through this twisted maze of sharp metal pieces would be instant death. But Mike moved through it like he was dancing, his hands moving on the controls with perfect timing. His reflexes had been shaped by millions of years of human ancestors who had to dodge falling rocks, charging animals, and natural disasters. Earth's deadly gravity had been training human reflexes for so long that other planets seemed slow and easy by comparison. "Phoenix Squadron, it's time for a crazy Ivan maneuver," Mike said into his radio, using military slang for a particularly dangerous tactical move. "Got it, Wildcard," came the reply from Lieutenant Beth Johnson, another human pilot, starting controlled collision course now. What happened next made the Korthok aliens watching from their ships feel true terror for the first time in the battle. The human pilots deliberately flew their damaged fighter ships directly at Korthok vessels, like they were going to crash and die. But at the very last second, just before impact, the human pilots would eject from their ships with perfect timing and precision. Their empty fighters would smash into the enemy ships and explode, causing massive damage to other alien species. This looked like desperate suicide tactics. But to humans, this was just smart use of resources. If a ship was too damaged to keep fighting effectively, why not turn it into a weapon? The human pilots treated their own lives as valuable, but not irreplaceable. They took calculated risks that other species would never dare attempt. Down on the captured Korthok command ship, Colonel Robert Martinez was coordinating the human ground attack. The atmosphere inside the alien ship had pressure so intense, it should have crushed human lungs like paper bags. But Robert just kept giving orders and directing his troops like it was a normal day at the office. "All units, the enemy is starting to retreat," he announced over the communication system. "Push forward and take advantage. They're finally learning what happens when you threaten people who are under human protection." From their underground shelters on the planet below, the crystal people of Zalera watched this incredible battle with minds that could barely process what they were seeing. These soft, fragile-looking humans were fighting with a combination of brilliant tactics and fearless courage that went against everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. The Crystal People had always believed that the strongest, most heavily armored species made the best fighters. But now they were watching creatures with thin skin and no natural weapons completely destroying one of the most feared military forces in the galaxy. The turning point of the battle came when the Korthok finally realized what they were really fighting against. This was not just an army or a military force. They were fighting an entire species that had been shaped and molded by the most dangerous planet anyone had ever discovered. Every human in that battle was a survivor of conditions that would kill most other life forms in the galaxy. For millions of years, Earth had thrown everything it had at humanity. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, deadly storms, dangerous animals, and natural disasters that would destroy entire civilizations. But instead of dying out, humans had adapted and grown stronger. Each challenge had taught them new ways to survive, new ways to fight, and new ways to protect the people they cared about. The Korthok began to understand that they were not fighting soldiers. They were fighting the children of a world that had spent millions of years trying to kill them and had failed every time. The final Korthok battleship turned and fled into the darkness of space, its massive hull covered in burn marks and holes from the human weapons. The once mighty vessel that had terrorized countless worlds was now running away like a scared animal. General Vask's voice came through the communication channels one last time, but he could barely speak clearly. His words were broken and filled with fear. "All ships retreat immediately," he stammered into his radio. "These Deathworld creatures, they fight like the entire universe has been trying to murder them since the day they were born. We cannot win against beings like this." Captain Jake Morrison stood calmly on the bridge of his ship, the Defiance, watching through the big viewing window as the enemy fleet disappeared into hyperspace. All around planet Solara, human ships moved into protective positions, making sure no other enemies could sneak up on the Crystal People. Even though the battle was over, the humans did not relax or celebrate. They immediately began helping anyone who had been hurt during the fighting. Human medical teams worked just as hard to save wounded Korthok prisoners as they did to help their own injured soldiers. This confused many aliens who were watching. Most species in the galaxy would let their enemies die after a battle, but humans seemed to think that all life was worth saving, even the lives of people who had just been trying to kill them. Ambassador Veltari, the leader of the Crystal People, slowly approached Captain Morrison. The crystal being was feeling a mixture of amazement and fear. He had watched these strange humans do impossible things, and he needed to understand how. "Captain Morrison," Veltari said, his voice making soft musical sounds like wind chimes, "I must ask you something. How did your people become so incredibly powerful? When I first saw you, you looked so fragile and weak. You have soft skin with no armor, thin bones that look like they could break easily, and no natural weapons like claws or fangs. But in battle, you fought like demons from the deepest nightmares. How is this possible?" Morrison was quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars and thinking about his home planet Earth. Through the viewing screen, he could see the beautiful blue and green world where humanity had been born, so far away, but always in their hearts. "Ambassador," Morrison finally said, "I think you misunderstand something important about my people. Our world did not make us strong in the way you think of strength. Earth did not give us thick armor or big muscles or natural weapons. Instead, it made us stubborn. It made us refuse to give up, no matter what." Morrison turned to face the crystal being directly. "You see, for millions of years, our planet tried to kill us in every way imaginable. Massive ice ages froze most of the world and made food almost impossible to find. Giant volcanoes exploded and covered the sky with ash, blocking out the sun. For years at a time, Earthquakes shook the ground and destroyed our homes. Terrible storms brought floods and lightning, and winds that could tear apart anything we built. The captain's voice grew stronger as he continued. But the worst part was not the natural disasters. The worst part was that every single day, just staying alive was a challenge. We had to hunt dangerous animals for food, but those same animals were also hunting us. We had to find clean water, but most water could make us sick. We had to build shelters, but our planet kept knocking them down with storms and earthquakes. Morrison smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had seen terrible things and survived them. Every ice age, every volcano, every mass extinction that killed most of the life on our world taught us the same lesson over and over again. When the universe tries to kill you, you do not just try to survive. You adapt to whatever challenge comes next. You endure pain and hardship that would break other species. And most importantly, you protect the people who cannot protect themselves. Just then, Communications Officer Lisa Park looked up from her workstation. Captain, we are receiving urgent messages from the Galactic Council. They want us to send them a complete report, explaining exactly how we managed to win this battle. They say our victory was impossible according to all their military calculations. Morrison thought about this for a moment, then nodded. Tell the Galactic Council this message from humanity, he said. And his voice carried the weight and authority of an entire species that had fought its way from a dangerous world to the stars. Earth did not create a race of warriors. Earth created a race of survivors. And the most important thing about survivors is that we never learned how to quit. Far away in the depths of space, the Galactic Council received the human reports and realized that everything they thought they knew about warfare and strength was wrong. The word Deathworld had always been used as a warning to keep people away from dangerous planets. But now they understood that it was really a label for worlds that created the most incredible species in the galaxy. The official report that went into the Council's permanent records said, "We recommend immediately creating alliance treaties with all Deathworld species. In a galaxy full of predators and conquerors, we desperately need protectors who were literally born in hell and learned to survive by helping others." As the human ships prepared to return to Earth, the crystal people of Zalara finally understood something that would change galactic politics forever. Sometimes the most dangerous predators in the universe are not the ones who learn to kill for pleasure or conquest. The most dangerous ones are those who learned to survive by protecting the innocent and the helpless. Retriclod can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.